Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 426 of the Health Detective Podcast. If you do not know what's going on in the next 2 months, if you haven't heard from 425, we're basically having almost a straight 2 months of FDNs. We do have some other professionals in the mix there, but it's going to be really fun, especially if you're looking into the course. You want to know who are the type of people that go through this program, what results have they gotten, what are their backgrounds. This next 2 months is going to be exceptionally fun for that. And if you are interested, I'd highly recommend listening to as many as you can. We'll always try to specify in the description and titles the conditions or symptoms that the person dealt with, just to make it easier for you to figure out which ones you might resonate with the most or get the most out of. Also, if you would like to meet us in person, we have our biggest conference of the year coming up in October. It's going to be October 9th through 11th in beautiful San Diego, California. San Diego is pretty beautiful any time of year. I've been lucky enough to go there several times, but it is definitely nice in October, especially if you live in the Northeast or in the Northwest, or you're living where I'm about to move to, Austin, Texas, and it's too hot. San Diego in October is basically 75, sunny, and just perfect. So that is where we are doing the HICS conference that's hosted by Jeremy and Jen Maleka. Jeremy Maleka of Biocanic. If you guys do not know his name, you probably know his company. And they are very good friends of FDN. They've been doing FDN stuff for this long, or so long, to the point that Jen Maleka is the one that got me into FDN over 8.5 years ago. So last year we had over 80 FDNs in attendance. This year we are on track to have well over 100. I was just on the meeting with our team and I checked how many tickets have we already sold, or including the staff stuff, how many people are we expecting? And we're at over 35, 40 now. So we are definitely going to hit that 100. If you want to meet people like Reed Davis, Elizabeth Gaines, Lucy Korup, our executive director of the graduate program, all of them will be there at HICS. So please make sure to grab your tickets. And I just realized I needed to share the QR code for that. So I'll leave that up for you guys for a second. That beautiful picture is actually San Diego. Not only is it San Diego, it's exactly where we're going to be doing this conference. So let me make that a little bigger for you guys here. Okay, so in the middle there, that's where the conference actually is. That beach on the left, that's where they'll be doing the VIP dinner and networking event. So if you can get the VIP tickets, please do. Jeremy was nice enough. We are the only company right now who has this discount. No one else in the industry has this. It's 45% off until July 15th. So you just use code HDP at checkout and that'll get you that. If you need links, if you're listening on audio, you're like, what the heck's going on? Just go to the show notes below and you guys can get hooked up with that there. I will stop sharing this. All right, let me introduce our guest for this episode. So Deniece is a passionate advocate for holistic wellness and metabolic health, and she brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise. She has 29 years of experience working with thousands of men and women of all ages as a certified personal trainer and health coach. Deniece is committed to empowering individuals to optimize their health through personalized nutrition, lifestyle modifications, and evidence-based interventions. That is no joke with the amount of people that you've worked with, which I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll jump into that, but regardless, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So I know that you are obviously, you graduated in FDN 2024. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So clearly you were doing this stuff prior to FDN. So normally I ask the question around what your health symptoms look like and when did they begin? But with a 29-year career, let me first ask, was it health symptoms that even led you into this space, or was it something else? And if so, what was that thing?
Yes. So I had definitely been in the health space for a very long time, but it was definitely my own symptoms that led me to FDN. About 8 years ago, I was training a lot of clients. I was teaching group fitness classes. I was pretty in tune with nutrition because I was coaching a lot of clients. And I started to become just exhausted. And it was not an exhaustion like, you're just tired. It was, I had a hard time getting myself out of bed. I was having achy joints. a little bit of brain fog, just, couldn't figure it out. I was living on coffee, and I love coffee, but I was having coffee, morning, noon, and night. And I thought it was no big deal because I thought, oh, I must be a quick metabolizer. I could have coffee at 9 o'clock and fall asleep in 20 minutes. No big deal. And after a while, it really took its toll on me, and I decided to reach out to somebody. And I reached out to a holistic practitioner, and she ran some functional labs on me. And as I'm sure you may have guessed, I was just in complete exhaustive phase, HPA axis dysfunction. My cortisol had just bottomed out. And I was really low on a lot of vitamins and minerals. My B vitamins, vitamin C, magnesium, everything was low. My lactic acid was through the roof. My SIG-A, or my immune function, was down. All the things. And I was just, help me, what can you do? So with that, I really started learning more about the fact that more is not necessarily better. I was doing a lot of physical activity because I enjoyed it, but it was really burning me out. I wasn't taking care of myself with recovery and rest, which is so important. Like I said, I was doing a lot of the caffeine to keep myself going. I wasn't putting sleep as a priority. So all those things, once I started to really learn about how to make those things a priority, I felt, started to feel much better. I started to kind of dig into a lot of that stuff on my own after the fact. And when working with clients, I found myself, hearing a lot of symptoms and thinking, I really think you should test this. I really think you should go see this person. I really think you should do this. And then after a while, I thought, I can do this for them. I can help them. I feel like, I have a good understanding of this. So that's kind of what led me down that path of looking at the functional lab testing and looking at all of the points of, holistic health and functional health.
It's always interesting to me because we've had people like you on before. It's actually amazing how many times people like you end up in the world of FDN, because it's not like you were not more aware of fitness and nutrition than the average person. Obviously you were, but it just goes to show how, I won't say even flawed, but maybe incomplete, some of the messaging and education is around what it truly means to be healthy. So I want to almost backtrack a little bit if we can. For those years preceding FDN, while you were, personal trainer, nutrition coach, was it mostly about, hey, how can I look the fittest and get the most out of my performance, regardless of what that means for the other areas? Because I can't imagine that you wouldn't be overall aware of health, but then I hear about the pounding coffee at 9 p.m. and that, I think most people would know not to maybe advise that. So was it,
Absolutely.
you were doing that just to hang on? Like that wasn't always a thing? I just kind of want to know more about,
Yeah. That wasn't always. I think as I started to be more and more exhausted, and I was just, running myself to the ground, I feel like that, started to pick up, because that was kind of like, it became addicted to it, almost like it was like I needed that to keep going. I was having these big crashes during the day and I couldn't figure out what it was. And, again, there's a big difference. I tell people all the time, there's a big difference between, being healthy and looking fit or losing weight. Like there's a very big difference. People want to lose weight, but you have to think about your health also. And you have to think about, you can look at two people and think one, oh, this person must be healthy because look at them. And they can be, so metabolically dysfunctional, can have so many symptoms, so many things going wrong. It really changed my thought process about fitness and health into more of a longevity. I started to look more into that piece, which I had never done prior.
It's interesting that you mentioned, like, because you kind of think we wouldn't even be able to fake it, but you think about like some of like the pro bodybuilders, right? Like a Ronnie Coleman. And for those that don't know that guy, please look him up and what he competed at. He I think he was on stage at like 260 or 270 pounds, which is insane because the man has no body fat on him. I don't think he's like 5'11. He's not even over 6 foot. The amount of stuff that person had to be on to do that kind of, to be at that level on that stage, but he does. I mean, at least from a guy's perspective, right? He looks freaking sweet. I'd be like, I'd love to walk around like that at one point. But the guy's gotten all these surgeries and all this kind of stuff. He's a very happy guy. I don't think he regrets any of his choices. But yes, he was not necessarily healthy, even though he was the top of the bodybuilding world. So it's kind of a fine line. And then you get some natural bodybuilders, which some of them could even be unhealthy, and then some of them could be super healthy as well. So the looks don't always match what's going on under the hood. You could have a perfectly polished car, but maybe it has no engine left in it or the engine's, full of gunk or something like that. So you mentioned how it was kind of a paradigm shift to start thinking from this longevity standpoint. You might relate to this next part. You might not. I just always ask it because I've seen it as a consistent enough theme with people who were into the fitness side and then got into what it truly meant to be healthy. Did you find that it was challenging towards your identity? Was it hard to accept some of the stuff? Because, for example, I know that we've had people on where you talk about macros, right? Mm-hmm. And they were always the people telling their clients that it's purely calories in, calories out, which of course is extremely important. And at the extremes, it is always true. If I eat 10,000 calories a day, I'm going to gain weight. If I eat 0, I'm going to lose weight. Of course, it's true at the extremes. But then we get these nuances with sick people. And so we've had someone on before where they're like, I was telling people this for years, and then I started to realize it wasn't working the same way for me that it used to work. So did you have that identity crisis, or was it more like a natural transition that just made sense because you didn't feel good?
Yeah, I would say 100%. If you asked me probably 10 years ago, I would have said to you, yeah, calories in, calories out, simple. And that did work for the majority of my clients. However, in the last 5 years, I have been working primarily with just weight loss in a metabolic clinic. And it has completely changed my thought process on that. It is in no way that black and white. I see it all the time. There are so many different layers that go into it. And once, especially for women, as you become a certain age and hormones start changing, we become more insulin resistant, blood sugar starts changing, cortisol, all the things. It is not that simple. And you really have to take a deep dive into what's going on internally. For some people, I really have to work on their health first before we can even touch the weight loss piece, because you can bang your head against the wall forever. And, and I see it all the time, these people going up and down, up and down, up and down, because they have not worked on their health at all. And you have to get that straight before you can start that weight loss piece. And usually once you get healthy, the weight loss piece just comes with it. Like you will start to lose weight. And then it becomes so much easier.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth. I just want to understand this. So would the philosophy for you, generally speaking, now be, okay, once you get healthy, you will be at a good enough weight, but at the same time to also honor the side that does talk about, fitness and performance. It does, if you are trying to perform at the highest level, if you're trying to cut for a competition, if you're trying to make weight for something, obviously then not only in a perfect world would you be healthy, but you do really have to pay attention to these things to achieve those levels, correct?
Absolutely. If you're, I always say that I deal with the general population. And so if you're an elite athlete, if you're a bodybuilder, if you have these specific goals, yes, you're really going to want to dial in on your calories, your macronutrients. You're going to want to hit certain goals. Absolutely. But for the most part, a lot of people really have to get the health piece in place first. And most people, generally speaking, a lot of people don't want to count calories. They don't want to count macronutrients. Some do, but a lot of them don't. Sometimes it's triggering for people. Some people come from an eating disorder background and you can't do those kind of things. So I think it's really important to teach and educate somebody about proper nutrition and how to, generally work on healthy habits every day. Because if you can kind of set those habits in place, and start working on the consistency of them, that's kind of where I see the long-term success. If you have like I said, if you have a specific goal and you're trying to like hit that competition in 3 or 4 months, yes, you're going to really zero in. But for the general person, that's not the case.
Yeah. And historically, it just makes sense. If you look at our ancestors, none of them, had a lot of the issues that we had today, and none of them needed to count calories and all that stuff. At the same time, none of our ancestors were, even from a natural bodybuilding perspective, on stage at 185, 190 pounds, perfectly shredded with proportional shoulders to their hip to waist ratio, all this kind of stuff. No one was doing ultra marathons. So if you want to do those things, yes, you're probably going to have to dial in. And I'm someone who gets both sides of this because I struggled so much at 18 to try to eat the right way. And I was actually more strict with counting and tracking then because I wanted to get into what I called natural bodybuilding. And I say natural as I was eating like the MedRx Big 100s and Wawa, which depending on where people are in the country, that would be like the equivalent of a Sheetz or like a Royal Farms, just like a crappy fast food place that you can get gas at. And that was my version of natural bodybuilding. The only thing natural was not taking steroids. I was pretty much eating everything processed and unnatural. And so as I got healthier, though, it was crazy how my body composition changed. Like I was always hyper skinny. And then naturally, I kind of just gained like what I considered a very healthy 15 to 20 pounds as I got my digestion locked in. I know people are normally trying to do the opposite. They're trying to lose weight. For me, I actually kind of gained this healthy weight. And what was really nice is I found it much easier and more effective to manipulate the calories and the macros. I shouldn't say manipulate them. What I mean is I feel that it was easier to get results when I did manipulate the calories and the macros once I was starting from a healthy base. Whereas when I was trying to do that unhealthy, I could track everything perfectly. And I'm fighting an uphill battle. That's how it always felt. So I do believe in this philosophy. Try to get healthy first, modify it from there, because there's people that are doing the modifying thing forever. And then I cannot tell you how many stories we have had on the show of people coming on that their bodies are just shot and burn out. So I'm always very appreciative when people like you come on and tell this, because I can only imagine how many individuals our guests have been able to help even indirectly through their stories over time. So when you were diving deeper into the labs, you already mentioned some of the stuff that you found. If you had to say, what were 2 or 3 of the biggest things that you believe now or know now were contributing to the way that you felt? Because even like the coffee thing, I joked about that, but that was still a symptom or a side effect of the overall problem, right? The fact that you felt like you needed to do that and can fall asleep is a separate issue. So what were some of the main things that you learned and changed that you do believe were contributing negatively to your health?
Well, number one, I would say, exercise is wonderful. I absolutely love it. I'm one of those people that, if you let me, I would move all day long, but it is a stressor and you can overdo it. And so number one, I was definitely overdoing it. So I was doing a lot of high intensity work at that time. Because I was teaching classes, training, and then doing my own workouts. So I definitely overdid it with the exercise. And then I was under recovered. I was not taking the time to recover from all the workouts. So my body was just, there was no hypertrophy. I was breaking down muscle. I would also say that I probably was not hydrated enough. That's always been something I always have to work on. And I will also say the other thing is during that time, I was probably a lot more in tune with tracking my macros because I did coach a lot of people on that. And because I was trying to, kind of fit those macros, I did eat a lot of processed food, a lot of packaged food because it was easy. I knew exactly what was in it and I could track it a lot quicker. And so with that, I wasn't eating enough whole foods. I wasn't getting in all the good quality foods, the fiber that I needed. There were so many things lacking because I was trying to fit those macros. So I think looking back, I was trying to do all the things, but not putting that health piece in there.
Sure. What are some of if you have them off the top of your head, what are some of the things that you would consider warning signs that someone might be in this, kind of danger zone? And what I mean by the danger zone is, they're pushing it with the fitness. They think everything's fine, but maybe if you were watching them, you'd be able to tell that, whoa, there's a time limit on this. And I ask almost even semi-selfishly, because deep into the space as I am, and as much as I've experienced, the better that I feel. I've always been very physically active, and I want to do all the things. I'm in the same boat as you, that if you let me, I'd go out and do it all. And I still find myself right now, I'm like, I don't know if I'm pushing it too much, because I seem to struggle with certain aspects of recovery. And I'm like, well, duh, idiot. I'm trying to do 5 to 10 hours of pickleball a week, 3 hours of kickboxing, a couple hours of weightlifting. I want to do all this stuff. And so are there warning signs now, other than like a readiness score going down on an Oura ring, that people can watch out for?
I would say, number one, if you're waking up, if you're waking up not feeling refreshed, if you're waking up feeling like you're having a hard time getting out of bed, I think that's a red flag right there. Because it tells you you're either not recovered or your sleep is not good, which that's so important across the board. So I think that would be my number one. I think also doing, just knowing your body. Like, I mean, are you feeling sore for no reason? Like, are you feeling achy? Are you feeling sore? Those kind of things, I think, jump out at me that were really like warning signs for me. So I think those were probably the big ones, I would say.
Do you ever, for the weightlifters out there, do you find that their recovery, or I shouldn't say recovery, but their growth or strength increases are stunted? Because this is another place where I actually never know where to draw the line between pushing it versus, hey, I actually need to relax. Because let's say I do something like kickboxing. Well, improvement with that is not a strength number. Improvement with that could be, I've now done, I'm making up the number, 50,000 punches. And so the technique's more perfect. So I actually even have more power and accuracy in that punch. I could still be burnt out, but just because I showed up and did the hour, I'm actually improving in that. So I've realized in the past that implying that not improving is 100% a good sign that, let me word it a different way. Saying that you're improving implies that everything is going well and means that you're healthy is not accurate, because I can improve in certain activities, even something as silly as pickleball. If my shots are more accurate, I think I'm improving, whatever. But with strength training and hypertrophy, I'd have to imagine that those results are either coming very slowly or not at all if someone's in that danger zone. Do you think that's accurate or no?
Yeah, I would agree. And because I definitely have had that happen. And being somebody that's lifted weights for a very long time, when you are following a program and you are working on progressive overload, and you don't, I mean, especially for beginners, I mean, if you don't see any progress, if you're not seeing that, there's something wrong. There's something going on, whether it's, internally that you have something going on that needs, you need to work on within yourself, or the program's not done effectively. It could be one or the other. But yes, because generally speaking, you should be seeing improvements. And I always recommend for people, I mean, I know it's hard sometimes to gauge that with weights, but even if you have access to an in-body machine or something where you can check on your skeletal muscle mass, I really like to use that with clients, because I think it's a really good progress tracker. The scale is not going to tell you much. So I think doing that is a really good way to keep track of that.
Like a DEXA scan would be an example of that, correct?
Yeah, if you had, a DEXA scan, but there's so many, things that you can get now, lower cost, that you can at least track some of those parameters.
That's exciting, because I've always loved the DEXA scan stuff. But yes, there's an accessibility issue, both financially and even just location. They're not at every block or anything. And I'm kind of waiting for the day that's just standard in every gym, because one, I actually think you would increase compliance, because anyone that is building muscle naturally, you're right. If someone from day one was fortunate enough to be running a nice novice program and someone was helping them, I mean, you actually do blow up pretty fast, especially if you're a guy. When I got those novice linear progressions down, I mean, my strength gains were insane. The hypertrophy was insane, but most people aren't following those types of programs. They aren't doing the proper technique. And it's kind of ironic because I had to spend 5 years just to learn what a proper novice program looked like. So from 16 to 21, I'm screwing around. And then I realized, oh, damn, if I just followed Mark Ripito or starting strength or something like that, my squat blew up, bench press blew up, all that. So yeah, if they, assuming that they're not doing it perfectly, because very few do, if you could see that on a scan once a month when you're coming in, where it's like, hey, coach, I don't feel like I look any different, but I could show you, hey, well, you've gained 1.5 pounds of muscle because it was your first month training. And maybe you had the capability of doing that if you were in a caloric surplus. That's pretty sweet. So hopefully that those become more accessible soon. All right, I want to transition a little bit to the FDN side of things. So you graduated in 2024. I had read that you went through the course fairly quickly. I think it was 5 months or something like that, under 6, which is great. Now, if I'm following your timeline correctly, you have all this experience in personal training and nutrition coaching. Several years ago is when you start to really notice things aren't feeling good. And then you go through FDN maybe halfway through that journey. So if we could, how were you feeling by the time that you signed up for FDN? Let's just start with that. That's the first question. How are you feeling when you signed up for FDN? Were you doing better than your worst, I'm guessing, but still with some things?
Yeah, no, I was feeling very good when I started FDN. I kind of felt like I was in a good place. I definitely think going through the course though helped me improve on things for sure, because I learned even more about, the ins and outs of every aspect of my body, how it's all connected, and everything is going to make a difference in how I perform and, my longevity, how mobile I am, the quality of my life, all the things. So I was feeling great, but I definitely think I still learned a great deal that I'm still working on today.
Cool. So that was going to be my next question then. Even with you feeling good, we're very thankful for that. What's cool about the FDN labs, I just mentioned this in our previous podcast, is they're so unique because you can take someone that is ridiculously sick, like I was when I went through it, and you find tons of stuff for them to do on the labs. You can find someone that claims to feel good, or maybe they even literally do feel good, but you could still find some warning signs on the labs. So by the time you got through FDN, we include labs in the cost of tuition. For those that don't know, that's why I'm asking this. I know you mentioned some in the beginning too, but just to reiterate, what were some of the maybe more interesting findings to you? Was there anything major still to work on, or just something you wouldn't have expected?
Actually, one of the things that was interesting to me and has really helped me is I had I didn't know this, but I had a histamine intolerance. And, I had never really thought twice about it, but, I noticed, I did have a lot of itchy skin at certain times and things like that. But I don't know, I just never really thought twice about it. And then, with the wellness panel, realized how high the histamines were, and working on that with supplementation was super helpful for me. I swear by that now. That was really helpful. I think my cortisol was way better than it was when I had first checked it. So, and I could feel that, obviously I felt better, and I could see it in the data points, which was great. I would say, my, gut function, could use some work. Just, I definitely, it was interesting to see some of the, maybe immune function in the gut, leaky gut. Some of that was there, of course. Protein breakdown, which is important for me because I do really work on getting a good amount of protein every day. But it was interesting to see that I wasn't really breaking protein down very well. So, working with digestive enzymes was really helpful for me too.
Awesome. Okay. One of the things that you learned in FDN is about HPA axis dysfunction. And this is what I wanted to, I really wanted this to kind of be the meat and potatoes of today's episode. So I thought it was interesting. For those that don't know, we always have a note sheet that our guests fill out, and then I try to figure out what they want to talk about and relate it to that in some way. So one of the things that you are particularly interested in is working with your clients to figure out which phase of HPA axis dysfunction that they're in. And I think this is one of the most useful indicators in showing someone what they're capable of currently from a fitness perspective. So again, that's why I asked earlier, what are some warning signs that someone may be off? But if we can test, it becomes pretty clear pretty fast how much exercise and physical stress you can handle at any given time. So I'm not expecting us to give a full explanation right here of HPA axis dysfunction, but if we could, can we kind of just talk about that? What is it overall? And then how do you use this with your clients to figure out how this might affect their ability to exercise? Because I do not think even 1% of trainers, if you count all of them that are out there, even know what this is, let alone use this in guidance for their fitness programs.
Yeah, absolutely. Generally speaking, ideally, you want to wake up with your cortisol rising to start up top here, and then you're going to ideally have this gradual decline in that cortisol. But a lot of people end up with trouble sleeping. That's really, really a big one that I see a lot. And it's because that cortisol is up in the evening when it should be down here. Also, when you're exercising, some of these people are trying to work out fasted, this is something I see a lot. And fasting, don't get me wrong, works really well for some people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And it's a stress. And again, now you're putting that stress with exercise as a stress. And then maybe you're putting caffeine as another stress. And maybe you've got a gut infection and that's another stress. And when you add these all up, you're really compounding the issue for somebody. And so I really like to look at the cortisol rhythm, see kind of what's going on in their day, and think about, how can we reduce those stressors the best? It might be just taking one or two things out, or maybe exercising a different part of the day. For me, I used to always work out in the morning. I've discovered that actually half of the week I work out in the afternoon. It's really helpful for me because I sometimes just need that recovery in the morning. And so I work out in the afternoon. So, when I was in my 20s, it was great. No problem. I felt great. And I could work out with nothing in my stomach. No problem. Now it's not the same. I need to have some fuel. So there's no, one size fits all. And so I always try to take in each individual case and really try to find out where somebody's at. And I think looking at the labs is a really good indicator of, how much stress is going, what's going on with this person, and really chipping away at as many stressors as you can.
I'll never forget when I first went through, I shouldn't say first went through the FTN program, but when I went through the FTN program, my mentor was Brandon Mole, who he does basically just clinical advising at this point at FTN. And he showed me my HPA axis chart, and then he showed me my test results. And I was in the exhaustive phase. I was in the early stages of the exhaustive phase as a 21-year-old guy. And it made sense considering, unfortunately, at that time, years of drug abuse, panic attacks that happened for years, because of course, that's a very stressful experience. And I remember him telling me at the time, hey, you should probably, for at least just this moment, maybe stick to longer extended walks. And that's going to be the physical activity. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Because I'm playing basketball 6 hours a week at that time. I always loved this. This is not even close to what they actually do, to be clear, but it was on bodybuilding.com at the time. It was like a Navy SEAL buds training thing. So I'm doing the bleacher runs, I'm running miles, I'm doing the calisthenics, all these things. I got a high off of that and I loved it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, what is this guy talking about? I'm only going to walk. And I remember I did that for about 7 days. And on that 7th day, I didn't even realize what I was missing until it came back. To your point about not feeling rested when you wake up. I didn't know I was experiencing that because I think I forgot what it felt like to feel good. And I just woke up with mental clarity, energy, motivation to get out of bed and go do stuff. Normally it was forcing myself to do it, but now I just wanted to do it because that's how a healthy human being feels. And I couldn't believe it. But the only thing that I could attribute it to was not doing that extra physical activity throughout the week. And guys, this is not a permanent thing. It's especially not a permanent thing if you're on that younger side. Again, I'm able to do a lot of these things now. Maybe I need to back off a little bit, but the fact that I can even push it to a point where I need to consider backing off just shows the progress that was there. So this is not a death sentence. It's not forever, but it's one of the easiest stressors to tone down right now. And that's what's going to allow your body to heal, because people forget this. The body's always healing. That's how a paper cut works. You don't have to give it any magic spell or ointments or commands. You don't have to go to the hospital. You just wake up one day, and for whatever reason, our body is designed in this insane way where it knows something's wrong and can heal it. That's also happening in all the other areas of the body. But if we're picking the scab every day, metaphorically speaking, then we're going to be screwed, and we're not going to actually fully recover in the way that we need to. So that's great. I want to ask too, have you had any, I'm sure you have had any clients yet where, they are the ones exercising 6-7 days a week, but they come back with the exhaustive phase of HPA axis dysfunction? How the heck do you navigate those conversations, assuming that they have happened? Because I'd imagine you face some resistance sometimes.
Absolutely. Because, if you're somebody that really is passionate and just loves working out, or loves running or cycling or whatever it might be, or boxing, it's hard to tell that person, you might have to, slow this down a little bit. That was hard for me. It's very hard. But I have one client who, I can give you an example. She is an avid cyclist. I mean, she rides her bike miles and miles every day, goes on trips and rides, uphill, and does all the things. And, she had been telling me, she was a weight loss client and had been telling me, I'm exhausted, and, talking about how she doesn't sleep well. She's like, I wake up exhausted. And I'm asking her all these questions because, I know I could see exactly the writing on the wall. And so, I said, you know what, let's run a few tests. Let's look at this. And we did a stress and hormone panel with her. And of course, as I thought, she was in, complete exhaustive phase. Her immune function was down. All her sex hormones were low, because, she was just, everything was down. And, she almost cried. She was like, this is the first time I've ever felt heard. Like, I tell doctors this and they just tell me, I'm getting older, and, this is what it is. I'm exercising a lot, and, this is what my life is going to be, basically. And so, for her, it was a tough conversation, because it's, not that you can't go cycle anymore, but now we got to prioritize recovery. We got to really prioritize sleep. So how can we do that? We got to really prioritize how you're fueling for those cycling workouts, because that's another thing that's really important. If you're running your body into the ground and not fueling it properly. So there's a lot of different aspects that have to get addressed, and it doesn't happen overnight, but we've been working on that. And, and she's not, healed at any point right now, but she's working on it. And she just needed somebody to really help her understand what she was doing to her health.
Yeah. I'm glad that she worked with you and that you're catching it, at least, because that's the process of getting it better. And you're right, it's not overnight. I'll never forget one of the more dramatic ones that I worked with. It was a woman my age. She was probably only a couple years older than me. I was maybe 25, 26 at the time. So she was probably 27, 28, and very into bodybuilding, fully natural, but like very into it, waking up at 5 a.m, going to the gym before working the 9 to 5, often finishing the full gym session before sunrise even came up, right? Which we know as FDNs, you got to be getting the light and all that kind of stuff. But was very dedicated to this, held state records for bench pressing and all these things. And I'm looking at the test results, and I actually called the lab to make sure that there wasn't a mistake with it, because her progesterone was pretty much non-existent. And this was a late 20s woman who had been off birth control for over a year. And we're like, what the heck? And so I actually went to the clinical advisors for this. For those that don't know, we have clinical advisors at FDN, which you can utilize once you graduate. So I just went to them to get some help with the case. I said, I've never recommended the bioidentical hormones. It's something that's taught in the course, but it's a loose thing that, few people actually end up using. And still, in 8.5 years of practicing as an FDN, it is the only time where myself and a clinical advisor have been fully aligned with this. Again, for someone in their 20s, where we're like, I think she'd just benefit from this and she'd get a lot of help from it. Sure enough, she took that and it did help a lot. But my point was, I'm like, how much farther would this person have gone, unfortunately, if they never worked with someone like you and I to actually see where their body was at? They would have
Right.
just said, I need to work harder, because you know how these types of individuals
Mhm.
are. I think you're probably like this yourself. If something's not going right, we just need to work harder. That's the solution. We have to be more disciplined,
You're
push
not doing
harder in the
it.
gym. Yeah, and that doesn't work at a certain point. So we do have a question here from the audience, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I don't know what bot was set up for whatever words you said. We must have had a keyword at some point, but you can ignore that autoresponder. So Tracy asked, are weight loss and metabolic optimization basically the same thing? I mean, these are the words that we used in the title. So I'm
Okay.
curious, do you consider these identical or just similar?
No, and actually, I mean, I would pretty much say they're very different.
Okay.
When you think about weight loss, you're looking at a number on a scale that is, consists of three things: your water mass, your lean mass, which is your skeletal muscle mass, plus your bones, your organs, your blood, and then you've got your fat mass. And so a lot of times people say, I want to lose weight, but what they're really trying to say is, I want to lose fat, but they don't realize that. And so um, weight loss is just taking that number down on the scale. That's what we're doing. Metabolic optimization is optimizing the way your body uses fuel. So how it creates and uses energy. So when you take in food and you utilize that energy, how can your body do that most efficiently? So they're two totally different things. Like, you can lose weight but not be metabolically healthy. But typically, when you're metabolically healthy, you're not going to be in a situation where you need weight loss, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So I think that's something that I really have to um, talk about a lot with people, because it is a big fallacy. Like, people thinking, I just want to lose weight. And if they see the scale go down, they're excited. And it's like, no, the scale goes down because you're not retaining as much water today, or the
Mhm.
scale went down because you're paring down muscle because you're not taking in enough protein, you're not resistance training. Those are all things that are going to damage your metabolism in the long run. So that's not what you want to happen to optimize your metabolism. And that's the big thing I see with weight loss clients is they're constantly in that up and down, because they damage the metabolism, go back
Mhm.
up, damage the metabolism a little bit more, go back up. And it keeps going down and down and down. And then they get into this state where it's broken down and they're frustrated. And granted, they should be, I get it. They're upset, and it's a really hard concept. But once you get it and you can educate them on how to boost and make the metabolism better, if they're patient enough, um, it's like eye opening.
Great point. Thanks for the question. It's amazing how fast this is already going. I feel like this always happens to me on podcasts, but we got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have time to shout out your business, of course. So I'm going to ask a question here that I admit hopefully will both promote FDN, but also you as
Yeah,
well. So you've been an FDN for, I mean, it just says 2024. So has it been about a year or less than a year?
a little bit more than a year now.
Okay, perfect. A little bit
Over
more
a
than a
year.
year. You already had extensive experience with clients, which is not always the case when someone comes to FDN. In fact, I mean, it literally said thousands in your bio, right? So you're way more in the 99th percentile of people in terms of how many individuals you've worked with. So I'd love to know, how has this positively impacted the way that you've been able to work with clients over this last year and a half, ever since you got your certificate?
Yeah, I think I've been able to it's really helped me understand um, individuals a little bit more. And it's really helped me dive a little bit deeper into those cases where people are having trouble. I deal with weight loss the majority of the time. So for the client that comes in and, is having trouble losing weight, they're frustrated. They feel like they're doing all the right things. They feel like they're in a caloric deficit and they're still not seeing results. It's really helped me to put together a plan to look at their metabolism and look at the labs and look at all the stressors and see how we can try to, again, improve their health, because usually once we start doing chipping away at that, it really helps them with the weight loss.
Are you at a lower client volume now because of the fact that the work is so much more in depth, or have you managed it somehow with the same client load?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's actually for me, it's just kind of changed gears a little bit. Whereas I do a little bit more with the functional labs and the health piece versus personal training. So,
Sure.
I mean, I love the training, but I do a little bit less of that and I do a little bit more with the health piece.
Cool. We have a woman, Katie, coming on. I think she'll be on in August. And I remember I actually signed her up for FDN over the phone. She had called into our place. And I remember she was taking something like 100 clients a month for health coaching. It was like these little 30-minute
Mhm.
sessions. And she would just do it all day, every day, and would take the clients every 2 weeks. It was nuts. And then I'm just excited to hear from her because for you guys, that can be stressful when you have such a high client load. So I was asking in the sense of I know she's gotten a much smaller client load now, but she's able to get them better results and she's able
Mhm.
to keep her sanity because I don't care, even if you're only quote unquote working with 40 hours a week, if you have to deal with 100 different personalities in that intimate of a way every single month, that's a lot, man. You got to keep the
Mhm.
story straight. Obviously, we care about our clients. We'd like to remember the details of their life. So you're keeping notes on all this stuff. It's tough. So I know also this is probably going to be an interesting point for people that are considering going through FDN. You are one of the rare people who works both online and in person still. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
So what does this look like in person? Are you going over lab reviews in person, or is that where you still do more of the kind of
Yeah, I do
traditional coaching?
both. I actually do both.
Nice.
I do some virtual if they're not, in proximity to come in and see me. But I do work in a clinic, and I have people where we sit down together and we go through the lab results. I go through a plan with them. They come in for coaching, sometimes biweekly, sometimes monthly, and we work on all the things together. I enjoy being in person with people, but for some, obviously, we have to do virtual.
When you are or I guess I should word it this way: for those that are considering that side, and you enjoy it, which is great. I know that there's pros and cons to both. To me,
Yeah.
it's pretty clear. But I'm someone clearly I'm very extroverted. I find myself I had to be very careful actually during the pandemic. I thought it was more the fear of the pandemic that was screwing me up, and I realized it was not that at all. It was the fact that I went from being in person all the time speaking to not being able to do that at all, and I'm locked in my room half the day because even if I wanted to go out, other people didn't want to go out. So if you had to say like what are the top pros and cons, I guess, of the remote side versus the in-person side? Because there are FDNs that ask us all the time on the trainee side, I don't know what I want to go do yet. I don't think I can even build an online business if I wanted to. At the same time, I want to travel. So what would you say your top pros and cons are for each?
It's a good one. I think if being in person, and again, I think it has to do with your personality. I mean, I enjoy working with people one on one, and I enjoy the friendship and learning about people. And so for me, I really I kind of went from more of an online to now in person, and I probably do more in person now. And I enjoy that personally. But so for me, it's just a matter of what I enjoy. Um, Being online, I think for me, I'm not a very tech savvy person, and anybody that knows me knows this. So for me, it's more work for me to be online than it is to just be in person with somebody.
Gotcha.
I just feel it's natural for me.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think maybe that's what it comes down to. It's just a mix of personality and then,
Yeah,
the background and the skills. Anyone can learn anything, but yes, it does become harder when you're trying to keep up with the tech stacks. Or similarly, if someone's super introverted and shy, it's probably harder for them to deal with people one on one in person versus when they can kind of have a controlled setting
exactly.
of a Zoom room. So fair enough. I do think, I mean, it's a separate conversation. And I know anyone who's introverted is going to look at me and be like, dude, shut up. You're only saying this because you're extroverted. But I want to challenge people a little bit, even if you are introverted. My wife's very introverted. We are still all designed to be with other human beings. I don't think anyone is selling the idea and hopefully not believing the idea that introverted means that you were like on some hut or in some hut by yourself on the outskirts of the tribe. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think you would have survived doing that. So clearly we're supposed to have some human interaction. So just make sure if you're doing the thing online, go to some networking groups,
Yes.
go to the gym, like just do something where you see other people. I think that is a very undervalued part of our health.
Oh,
That's my,
absolutely.
yes, my opinion, two opinions here from clearly extroverted people. So, all right. Where can people find you if they would like to work with you? Because you did say that there are offerings remote if they'd like to. So obviously we'd like to shout that out. And then if you don't mind, I mean, gosh forbid that they happen to be local to you and have no idea. I'd love if we could shout out the in-person center as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the website, you can reach me on the website. It's mymetabolicmakeover.net. I'm most active on Instagram. I have a page called Workouts to Wellness. I do a lot of both health and fitness on there. And then if you are in the Charleston, South Carolina area, I am at the Metabolic Medical Center. And I take appointments. You can call there. You'll be able to find that information on that website as well. So I do, consults either over the phone or in person. So I'd love to connect with you.
I know for a fact we have FDNs that I've interviewed on this podcast that are in Charleston. So
Oh,
really
awesome.
cool. Yes, hopefully you guys go get connected
Yeah.
there. It's so special because 8 years ago, now I'm starting to sound like Reed. I'm making myself sound way older than I am. I'm like, oh, back in the day at FDN, like I was just happy to find someone in my state, not because there weren't a lot of FDNs, but we weren't connected in this way. There's no podcast, there was no graduate group. And now I find people that live 10 minutes away. And if you're in any remotely major city, there's always other FDNs. So definitely get connected with Deniece. That would be great. All right. I can't believe we're at 51 minutes. So I have to ask you the signature question here. And the signature question is this. If we could give you a magic wand, you could wave it and you could get every single viewer and listener to do one thing for their health, what would that be? And that can be getting us to start doing one thing, or you can choose to get us to stop doing one thing. And this is about any part of health. Doesn't have to just be like weight loss or something. So what's that one thing for you?
Okay. So on the positive side, I would definitely have to say lifting weights, 100% across the board. I would say if you are not already, just lifting weights 2 times a week. And it's really, I think people don't realize just how effective that is going to be for your life. Not only for your body composition, but just for bone density, for the quality of your life, for mobility. It's just so beneficial across the board. It helps with insulin resistance. It makes you more insulin sensitive. So there are so many benefits. If everyone can just 2 days a week lift weights, I think you will definitely benefit.
For sure. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I'm not going to be in Charleston anytime soon, but it is on the list.